Homeless girl saves a man from a deadly cliff fall, unaware. He's a billionaire and changes her life forever. One wrong step. That's all it took. 1 second, he was standing there, lost in thought. The next, his foot slipped. The ground beneath him crumbled. His body lurched forward. Panic surged through his veins as gravity yanked him downward. The roar of the wind swallowed his scream. His fingers scraped desperately against the jagged rock, searching, begging for something to hold on to. But there was nothing. This was it. This was how it would end. His grip faltered. His strength faded. His body dangled over the abyss, legs kicking at empty air. Below him, nothing but a sheer drop. A fall that no one could survive. His fingers began to slip, inch by inch. His heart pounded so hard it felt like it might burst. Then hands, small, rough, shaking with effort, but holding on with everything they had. A voice, breathless, strained. "I've got you." He barely had time to process what was happening. Someone, a girl, was gripping his wrists, refusing to let him go. She was struggling, her thin arms trembling under the weight of his body. She had nothing. No strength, no safety net, no reason to risk her life for a stranger. But she did. And she had no idea that the man she was saving was a billionaire. What happened next would change her life forever. Emily had nothing. Homeless since she was 16, life had stripped her of everything: her family, her security, her sense of belonging. The streets had become her only home, unforgiving and merciless. Each night, she curled up in a quiet corner, tucking herself into the shadows where she wouldn't be noticed. The cold pavement was her bed, a worn-out hoodie her only shield against the biting night air. Hunger was a constant companion, gnawing at her stomach like an ache that never faded. She had learned to blend in, to become invisible. The world moved past her without a second glance. Businessmen rushing to their offices, couples laughing as they passed, children tugging at their parents' hands. No one stopped. No one asked if she was okay. The city was filled with thousands of faces, yet she had never felt more alone. The days were spent searching for food, for a warm place to rest, for a little bit of kindness. Some days were better than others. A stranger would hand her a piece of bread, a cup of coffee, maybe a few crumpled bills. But most days were brutal. People crossed the street to avoid her, eyes filled with silent judgment. Shop owners shooed her away. Security guards warned her not to loiter. She had grown used to the whispers, the stares, the way people treated her like she didn't exist. But no matter how hard things got, she never lost one thing: her will to survive. Miles away, in a world so far removed from Emily's reality, William Grayson had everything. His name carried weight. His presence commanded attention. He was the kind of man who didn't need to introduce himself. Everyone already knew who he was. Wealth, power, influence, he had it all. He owned luxury penthouses in the most exclusive cities, drove cars most people could only dream of, and attended parties where the rich and famous toasted to their success. But none of it mattered. Behind the tailored suits and perfectly curated image was a man drowning in his own loneliness. The world saw him as untouchable, a billionaire with everything at his fingertips. But what they didn't see was the emptiness inside him. He had spent years building an empire, chasing success, climbing higher and higher, only to realize that the higher he went, the lonelier it became. His days were filled with meetings, contracts, and decisions that shaped industries. His nights were silent. No real connections. No one who truly knew him. Everyone wanted something: his time, his influence, his money. But no one ever asked how he was doing. No one cared about the man behind the name. For years, he told himself it didn't matter, that he had everything he needed. But the truth was, despite all the riches, he had never felt more lost. Two people, living completely different lives. One struggling to find shelter, the other drowning in wealth. One abandoned by the world, the other admired by millions. They had no reason to ever cross paths. But fate doesn't follow logic. In one single moment, one desperate act of kindness was about to change everything. The night was cold, the sky stretching endlessly above, scattered with stars that seemed too distant to touch. A soft breeze rustled through the trees, whispering secrets only the lonely could hear. William Grayson stood at the edge of a towering cliff, his polished shoes just inches from the drop. Below, the world was silent, too quiet. The city lights in the distance flickered like ghosts of a life that no longer felt like his. His mind was a storm, thoughts crashing into each other like waves against jagged rocks. What was the point of it all? The success, the power, the money, none of it had brought him the peace he so desperately craved. He had spent years chasing a dream, building an empire, proving to the world that he was unstoppable. And yet, here he was. Alone. Empty. Standing at the edge of everything, staring down into nothing. The wind howled around him, tugging at his coat as if trying to pull him back to reality. But reality had lost its grip on him long ago. He exhaled slowly, his breath forming a thin mist into cold air. Then, he took a step forward. One step too far. The loose gravel beneath his feet gave way, crumbling like sand slipping through fingers. His body lurched forward, and in that instant, time seemed to slow. His stomach twisted as he felt himself falling. His arms flailed, desperate to grab onto something, anything. His fingers scraped against the jagged rock, but the surface was slick with moisture, offering no grip. His breath caught. His chest tightened. This was it. The fall had begun. The world tilted, and for a split second, there was nothing but silence. No thoughts. No fear. Just the vast emptiness waiting below. And then a hands. Small. Rough. Desperate. Gripping onto his wrist with everything they had. A voice, trembling but strong. Hold on. It took him a moment to process what was happening. His heart was still hammering, his pulse roaring in his ears. But those hands, they were real. They were holding on to him. Fighting for him. He looked up. A girl. Thin, exhausted. Barely more than a shadow in the dim light. Her face was streaked with dirt, her hair a tangled mess, her clothes worn down to scraps. But her eyes burned with determination. She wasn't letting go. Emily had no idea who he was. She didn't care about his wealth, his name, or the empire he had built. She only knew one thing: she couldn't let him fall. Her arms trembled as she held on to him, her breath coming in sharp gasps. She dug her heels into the ground, using every ounce of strength left in her frail body. The weight was overwhelming, her muscles screaming in protest. But she gritted her teeth and pulled. He tried to help, but his body was heavy, unbalanced. His grip was weak, fingers numb from the cold. The struggle felt endless, every second stretching into eternity. The wind fought against them, the cliff beneath her feet threatening to give way. But Emily didn't stop. She refused to stop. Her heart pounded, her lungs burned, but she kept pulling, inch by inch, refusing to let go of the stranger whose life now rested in her hands. And then, one final effort. With a sharp gasp, she yanked him up, her body falling backward onto the damp grass as his weight collapsed onto solid ground beside her. For a moment, neither of them moved. Just the sound of heavy breathing, the wind, the pounding of two hearts that had just come back from the brink of disaster. William turned his head, staring at the girl who had just saved his life. She didn't say anything. She just lay there, chest rising and falling, exhausted. She had no idea that the man she had just pulled back from the edge was a billionaire. And she had no idea that this single moment, this one impossible, fateful moment, was about to change her life forever. The wind had settled, but the world still felt unsteady. The only sound was the ragged breathing of two people who had just come back from the edge, literally. William sat on the cold, damp ground, his chest rising and falling in deep, uneven gasps. His hands were still trembling, coated with dirt and scrapes from the struggle. He flexed his fingers, almost as if to make sure they still worked. Beside him, Emily lay flat on her back, arms stretched out, staring at the sky. Her thin frame barely lifted with each breath, exhaustion weighing down every inch of her body. She was shivering slightly, the whether from the cold or from what had just happened, even she didn't know. For a while, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched between them, not awkward, but heavy. The kind of silence that followed something life-changing, something impossible to put into words. William turned his head, looking at the girl who had just saved his life. She was young, maybe 19 or 20, but she looked like someone who had lived 1,000 hard years. Her face was streaked with dirt, her clothes frayed and barely holding together. Her sneakers had holes in them, and her hoodie was too thin for a night like this. And yet, there was something about her. Not just the way she had pulled him back from death, though that was enough to leave him shaken. It was something in her eyes. Something fierce, something unbreakable. She was nothing like the people he was used to, the ones in silk dresses and tailored suits, the ones who shook his hand with fake smiles and ulterior motives. No, this girl had nothing. And yet, she had saved him without hesitation. He swallowed hard. His throat was dry. Finally, his voice broke through the quiet. "Why did you help me?" Emily blinked, as if surprised by the question. She didn't turn her head to look at him. Instead, she just exhaled and said, "Because you needed it." Her voice was calm, steady. Like the answer was obvious. William stared at her. His entire world was built on transactions, on deals, contracts, give and take. No one ever did something for him without expecting something in return. Not in business. Not in life. Yet here she was. Someone who had nothing, no home, no money, no reason to care, risking everything for a stranger. "You don't even know me," he said, more to himself than to her. Emily finally turned her head, meeting his gaze for the first time. Her eyes were tired but sharp, as if she had seen enough of the world to know exactly how it worked. "Does that matter?" she asked. William didn't know how to answer that. No one had ever asked him that before. He had spent his life surrounded by people who knew exactly who he was. William Grayson, billionaire, CEO, powerful, untouchable. People either wanted something from him or feared him, and in return he had learned not to trust anyone. But Emily had no idea who he was. She hadn't saved a billionaire. She had just saved a man. And for the first time in a long, long time, that shook him more than anything else. He let out a breath and ran a hand through his hair. "I could have pulled you down with me." Emily smirked slightly, turning her face back toward the sky. "Yeah, that would have been annoying." William huffed out something close to a laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd. This girl, half his size, had just dragged him off the edge of death, and now she was talking like it was just another part of her night. Another long silence. The weight of everything still pressed down on them. Finally, Emily sighed and sat up, wrapping her arms around her knees. "Are you okay? Was he okay?" The question almost made him laugh. He had nearly died. A minute longer, and he would have been gone. And yet, the moment she asked, the only thing he could think about was that he wasn't sure he had ever been okay. Instead of answering, he just asked, "Who are you?" Emily shrugged. Just Emily. She didn't ask for his name. She didn't ask why he had been standing at the edge of a cliff at this hour, alone and broken. And that was the moment William knew. This girl was different. This wasn't fate. It wasn't coincidence. This was something more. And though neither of them knew it yet, this single conversation, this quiet, unexpected moment between two strangers, was about to change both of their lives forever. The nights blurred together in a cycle of cold, hunger, and exhaustion. Emily sat in her usual spot, a quiet corner near an alley, away from the worst of the city's noise but still close enough to scavenge when she needed to. She pulled her thin hoodie tighter around her body, but it did little against the chill creeping into her bones. It had been days since the night at the cliff, since she had saved that man. She hadn't thought much about it after that. It wasn't like she had expected anything in return. That wasn't why she did it. He was just another person in trouble, and she had done what she could. Just like that night had been a moment in time, so was her reality, the one where she was still homeless, still invisible, still struggling to survive. But then, something changed. The low hum of an engine made her look up. It wasn't the usual kind of car that passed through these streets. This one was sleek, polished, expensive. The kind of car that didn't belong anywhere near places like this. Her body tensed. Rich people didn't drive through these streets unless they were lost or looking for trouble. She instinctively shifted, preparing to disappear into the shadows. Then the back door opened. And there he was, William Grayson. She blinked, sure she had to be imagining things. There was no way. No way he had come back. No way someone like him, someone from a world so far removed from hers, would be here now, looking at her. But he was. He stepped out, the streetlights casting long shadows over his sharp features. He looked different, cleaner, put together. But something in his eyes was the same. Something she had seen that night at the cliff. Something deeper than wealth and power. "Come with me," he said. Emily stiffened. The words were simple, but they carried weight. She had heard similar words before, but never like this. Never without conditions, without expectations. Her gut reaction was to say no. To walk away. To pretend she hadn't heard him. But she didn't. She just sat there, staring at him, waiting for him to say more. William exhaled, running a hand through his hair. He seemed nervous, which was strange. Men like him didn't get nervous, did they? "I know you have no reason to trust me," he continued. "I know this probably seems crazy, but I don't think our paths crossed by accident." Emily scoffed lightly, shaking her head. "You think fate sent me to save your life?" His lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but something close. Maybe. She studied him. He wasn't dressed like some corporate giant looking to do charity work. He wasn't wearing the mask of someone pretending to care. He just looked real. "I don't need saving," she said after a moment. William nodded slowly. "I know." Silence settled between them. The city buzzed in the distance, but right here, in this tiny moment, it felt like the world had stopped. And then he said something that made the air shift. "But maybe I do." Emily's breath hitched. There it was. The truth. She had saved his life, but he wasn't here to pay her back. This wasn't about pity or guilt or charity. It was about something else. Something neither of them fully understood yet. She swallowed hard. Where would we even go? William's gaze didn't waver. Somewhere warm. Somewhere safe. Just somewhere that isn't here. Her fingers twitched around the thin fabric of her hoodie. Everything in her life had taught her to be cautious, to be skeptical, to never trust too easily because trust was dangerous. And yet, for the first time in a long time, she felt something different, something that felt a little like hope. She hesitated, her mind screaming at her to walk away. But her feet moved before she could stop them. She stepped forward. And then, before she could talk herself out of it, she slid into the car. The door shut behind her. She had no idea that this was the moment her entire life was about to change. The ride was silent. Emily sat stiffly in the back of the sleek black car, her fingers gripping the edge of her tattered hoodie. She felt out of place, like an imposter in a world she didn't belong to. The smooth leather seats, the soft hum of the engine, it all felt surreal. She stole a glance at William. He was calm, focused, but there was something in his eyes, something unreadable. The city blurred past them, shifting from the cold, cracked sidewalks she had known for years to something else entirely. The streets became cleaner, the buildings taller. Neon signs gave way to polished storefronts, and the noise of the city seemed to fade into something quieter, more controlled. Then, the car slowed. Her heart pounded as she looked out the window. Towering glass buildings stretched into the sky, their reflections shimmering in the dim city lights. The car rolled to a stop in front of an entrance she had only ever seen from a distance. Large glass doors, polished marble steps, warmth spilling out from the lobby inside. She hesitated. This wasn't her world. She didn't belong here. But then, William stepped out, walking around to her side. He opened the door, waiting. For a moment, she thought about running. But she didn't. Slowly, she stepped out, her worn sneakers touching the clean pavement, feeling small against the towering structures around her. William didn't say a word as he led her inside. The lobby was quiet, elegant, soft golden lights, polished floors that gleamed under the chandeliers. A place so different from the harsh, unforgiving streets she knew. She barely noticed the elevator ride. Her mind was spinning, trying to process everything, but nothing felt real. Then, the doors opened. She followed him down a long hallway, the plush carpet muffling their footsteps. He stopped in front of a door and turned to face her. Then, without a word, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small key. He slid it across the table beside them. Her eyes flickered to it, confusion written all over her face. "This is for you," he said quietly. "A home. A fresh start. If you want it." Emily's breath caught. Her fingers trembled as she picked up the key. It felt heavy in her palm. Real, solid, impossible. A home. Not a shelter, not a bench, not a doorway she had to leave before sunrise. A home. Her throat tightened. No one had ever given her something like this. No one had ever cared enough to. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. William simply nodded. "Go inside. See for yourself." She turned, sliding the key into the lock with shaking hands. The door clicked open. The moment she stepped in, her breath caught. It was warm, not just in temperature, but in the feeling of it. The soft glow of the lamps, the neatly made bed, the quiet hum of safety that filled the air. Her feet barely made a sound as she walked inside. She reached out, her fingers trailing over the smooth countertops, the warm wooden furniture, the thick blankets that covered the bed. Everything felt two. She wasn't listening for footsteps, waiting for someone to tell her to leave. She wasn't invisible. She was here. She was safe. And for the first time in years, she let herself believe. Maybe, just maybe, she had a future. Emily sat by the window, watching the city stretch out before her. The streets below were the same ones she had wandered for years, cold, unwelcoming, indifferent. But from here, from this place she never imagined she belonged to, they looked different. She still couldn't believe any of this was real. A home. A fresh start. Safety. Not because she had asked for it. Not because she had earned it. But because someone had simply cared. She thought back to that night. To the moment she had reached out, grabbing onto a stranger's wrist with everything she had, refusing to let go. She hadn't known who he was. She hadn't stopped to wonder if he was important or powerful. He was just a person who needed help. And now, sitting in the warmth of her new home, she realized something. She had saved him that night. But in the end, he had saved her, too. Not with money. Not with power. With kindness. And kindness can change everything. Life has a way of connecting people in the most unexpected moments. A single choice, a simple act, a moment of kindness. Emily didn't save William because she expected anything in return. She didn't know who he was, what he had, or what he could do for her. She only knew that someone needed help, and she chose to act. And in doing so, she changed both of their lives forever. Sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness create ripples we never see coming. And sometimes, helping a stranger can lead to a destiny far greater than we ever imagined. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because the world needs more stories like this.